So, Spencer, this is usually where we start this segment, the final segment of the show, with the Michigan panic meter. As Michigan just won, the panic meter should still be at Scarlet. So, I
Yeah.
thought a way of morphing this for today's show specifically. I thought of, and I just thought I didn't even mention you this in our break here. So I'm just going to spring it on you. If Ohio State and Michigan played this weekend instead of this ridiculous Big Ten title game with a crappy Iowa team, if they played in a neutral site, let's say, I don't know, Indianapolis, what chance would you give Ohio State to come back and beat Michigan?
I like the question. I mean, I'd say I think it'd be even. Like I really do. I think it'd be very similar to what we saw this weekend. Maybe Ryan Day realizes the error of his ways, and he's like, "Hey, I did a shit job of being aggressive that last week, so now I'm gonna come out and really, hit the ground running and be more assertive." So I don't know. I think we saw it was more evenly matched than maybe what it was supposed to be or what people expected it was going to be. So I'd give them a pretty. I would say it's probably they'd have a really good chance of winning the second time around on a neutral site. I'd be interested to see what the line was because it was 4.5, I think, in favor of Michigan at their place, neutral field, probably like 1.5 maybe in favor of Michigan. Like I think it'd be pretty damn close.
I'd be curious to see if the Michigan win in Ann Arbor would influence that line in any way, because I think you kind of deducted 3 points off the Michigan favorite. I think that's the smart way to go about it with how Vegas views these kind of games. So I wouldn't say it'd be 50-50, but it'd be close to a pick 'em for me. And because here's the thing, I just think the second Kyle McCord throws that interception, you're playing from behind the 8 ball. Now, I can't guarantee you in this hypothetical rematch, Kyle McCord won't throw more interceptions. But I think if Ryan Day had that game to do over today, I think he would force the issue more with Marvin Harrison Jr., which is insane because the guy had 118 yards and a touchdown. So I think they would, especially late in the game, feature Marvin more. And I think they might try and get a little bit more creative in the run game and get Travion Henderson going early in the game. And I think the McCord interception really just kind of short-stepped you from doing that. So, I mean, I think if they play again at any point this year, so the playoffs, I really give Ohio State a chance. And I think some people will look at it and go, nope, you just played, doesn't matter. I would love it. It won't happen. Listen, if they do the playoffs, if Ohio State makes the playoffs and Michigan, we're going to assume Michigan makes the playoffs. If it happens, you can't throw it away in the first round. You really can't. I would be incensed if they had like Ohio State and Michigan, Michigan 1, Ohio State 4. I would be incensed. It should be saved for the national title game. However, if the committee were dumb enough to do that, do you know what I like about it? It would give Ryan Day 4 weeks to plan for that game. And that I do think might help him grow a pair of balls for this hypothetical rematch.
All he wants for Christmas is a pair of balls. Yeah. No, I can I say this too?
You may.
The game came down to ultimately that final drive. And Ohio State got the ball to what? Like they were on like the 35. Like they were within striking distance of scoring a touchdown and tying that game and then just needing the extra point to win. And I thought it was ludicrous that you had like Blake Corum and some of these other players talking after the game about how you guys are fake tough. You're not really that guys, it came down to one drive. Can you really say it wasn't like they didn't play you tough if it came down to one drive? And that's why I think if it was on a neutral field, like you just saw what happened in Michigan's building and it came down truly to the last drive of the game. Like if it's funny how that drive decides how we talk about Ryan Day and this entire rivalry and everything, because if they had scored on that drive, by the way, we'd be all talking about how the last 2 years of Michigan, like they could have what hasn't been talked about enough is the fact that if Ohio State scores on that last drive and they win the game, we're talking about the Michigan program as a whole completely differently, because their entire last 2 years of existence where they were one of the best teams in college football just goes out the window. And we all just assume it had everything to do with Connor Stallions and the sign stealing and all this different stuff. That now, like Ohio State really had a chance to dilapidate and cut the legs out from underneath that program. Not necessarily in terms of recruiting, like they'll still get people. I don't think kids coming into Michigan really care about that, but just from the way that they're viewed and all the and some of like the PR that comes with it, they could have really done some damage to the program just by scoring on that last drive. But then you're going to sit there after the game and say like, oh, they're not tough. Okay, you guys almost lost. You kind of, in some sense, you kind of got lucky that you didn't lose in your own house. Like I don't know that we can say that about this team, and I think that to Ryan Day's point, he reiterated that all season. He was right. They are a very tough team for what it's worth.
Yeah, but that's what you say when you win. It is like I don't put a lot of stock into it. I just think it's the kind of crap that you talk when you win this game. Let's get to fourth and short here. First down is obviously the portal opened up here on Monday, and we got some names in there. We got Hank Bachmeier of La Tech. We got Will Howard of Kansas State. There's been like 17 other. Oh, Tyler Van Dyke of Miami, who
he just went in upon. We were recording this on Monday night, and he just entered the portal like I think minutes before we started recording.
Which I think he might be the most intriguing guy in the portal at this point, simply because he had first round hype on him. Yeah. But there is a situation brewing at Texas where Quinn Ewers has said he wants to come back for another season in college football. He was pretty good this year, but that probably makes sense if he has NFL aspirations to come back one more year. Arch Manning went to Texas, a la the way Quinn Ewers went to Ohio State, thinking that he was the heir apparent to the quarterback situation there. Obviously, C.J. Stroud took off, and then Quinn Ewers took off for Texas. It makes you wonder if Arch Manning or Quinn Ewers could be available. So, if Quinn Ewers decided he would he wanted to continue on and Texas chose Arch Manning over him, would you welcome back Quinn Ewers if he hits the portal?
Yeah. I 100% I would. No hard feelings. We get it. Hey, stuff happens. All is forgiven. All is well that ends well.
Yeah. No hard feelings in Ohio State. Sure, in Columbus. Sure.
As fans are lining up outside Ryan Day's house to just force him out of town. And how about the classic story about how Kirk Herbstreit had to move out of Columbus because people thought he was too not pro Ohio State enough. Like, yeah, nobody has hurt feelings. But I think if Quinn Ewers, it would be like a LeBron situation. Hey, you came here, even though he's from Texas, it's not exactly the same. But hey, you came here, you took your money and you left. Hey, but you're back to help us win a national championship. Okay, we'll welcome you with open arms. I would definitely take him back. I also want to add, Tyler Van Dyke is definitely intriguing, but as a listener to the Dan Le Batard show, and they talk frequently about Miami football, from my understanding, the guy can't read like zone defense. Like that's been the thing that's done him in this year is teams started realizing if they just play a cover 2 shell that he's basically shit out of luck and he doesn't know what he's doing. So that worries me. I'm going to be honest, Nick, if I'm having my pick, obviously, yes, the dream of, hey, Arch Manning, you got to sit another year. We're going to stick with Quinn Ewers and he becomes available and Ohio State swipes him is alive and well. I would love for that to happen, but it also doesn't feel like it's going to. So if I had my pick of quarterbacks that I would love to see come in the portal, it's Michael Pratt for me. Tulane's quarterback. Guy's electric. I saw some highlights on Twitter the other day from one of their like last game of the season or of the regular season or whatever the hell it was. He was dropping some dimes down the sideline. I think he would look very, very nice in scarlet and gray next year. That's my top. That is my golden goose, if you will, that I want in the transfer portal.
All right. So I actually have a few. One, I love Michael Pratt, and I think he's the kind of guy that if he came to Ohio State, balled out, won a national title, beat Michigan, I do think Michael Pratt could turn himself into a top pick next year.
And I think that's his incentive because he's a senior and there's talk that he might enter the draft, but that's his incentive to come back. It's like, hey, I'll go to a Power 5 school and light it up and then increase my stock and avoid a class year where you got some really high profile guys like Caleb Williams and Drake May and others. So, yeah.
So I also think DJ Uiagalelei is a name that I don't think we should sleep on. Oregon State's quarterback. Obviously, Oregon State's head coach just went to Michigan State, and DJ's got one more remaining year of eligibility. So I kind of think like you guys want to talk about like the perfect quarterback for this offense. DJU played in a bunch of big games at Clemson. His final year there was a bit of a disappointment, but he never had Ryan Day there. And so in 1 year, Jonathan Smith had a very nice year. He is a mammoth human being. So like I love the experience. He's also just a great kid. So like if you wanted to like have Aaron Nolan sit for a year, this would be the perfect 1 year player. But
I
I'll be
think that's
honest with
happening anyway. Like I don't think like we're obviously all excited about the Aaron Nolan era starting, but he's not playing his first year. There's no way they do that. I think it's almost inevitable that they go to the portal.
So I don't know. I think if Kyle McCord stays, I think there will be a battle in earnest between Aaron Nolan and Kyle McCord. And that's an if. I don't know yet. But can I just tell you, I think there would be no greater twist of fate than if you just went down and stole Arch Manning. You guys want to
Oh my God, I love it.
Here's the
Ohio's
thing.
close to Tennessee, right? That's where he grew up. It's not that far. It's a nice trip down the freeway there.
I don't know Pap Archie would allow this to happen, but I just think like you can pitch to this kid, hey, we've got an opening. You're stepping right in. You'll have 2 remaining years of eligibility, and these are the guys we have. And like I think there's a chance Ibuka comes back because of the injuries this year. You can show him all the other young guys who kind of balled out this year, and you say, we're going to give you $5 million in NIL money. Why don't you come here? Start right away. And again, that probably takes you out of Aaron Nolan, but I love the idea of Arch Manning. So, but I think DJU is a really good fallback option, and I'm kind of curious to see who else goes in. Like, I feel like we might have to do like a running bit because this could literally change with every single week that we do this.
I love the idea of as a player enters the portal, we have a big announcement on this show and ask if we would want him at Ohio State. So
can we limit it to either quarterbacks or great wide receivers? Or edge rushers, or maybe a left tackle.
Do they need wide receivers? Jeremiah Smith is coming next year. He's like the best overall receiver prospect ever of all time.
All right. So this brings us to second down. Marvin Harrison Jr. commented the other day that he has not made his decision yet on whether to go to the NFL. Would Marvin Harrison Jr. really come back to Columbus for another year?
All right, I'm looking into the camera right now. Everybody who's watching this, everyone who's watching this, give it up. Don't do it to yourself. Don't get your hopes up. Don't fall for it again. We had this happen last year with CJ Stroud. He didn't give a clear answer, and then he waited till the very last day to declare for the NFL draft. Guys, I understand. I gave a nice little soliloquy, swan song to Marvin Harrison the other day. It's unfortunate that he's leaving without any gold pants and that he's leaving without a national championship. I agree it would be great if he could stay. But this man is not going to pass up the potential to earn actual money, have a contract signed, and go as one of the top players in the draft this year. It's just not going to happen. Okay? So give it up. Let that dream go. I know we're all in our feelings right now, but Marvin Harrison is going to the NFL. And it's going to be okay because Jeremiah Smith is coming. Carnell Tate's on this. Like, they're going to have other wide receivers. It'll be okay. I know it's sad, but he will not be back on this team next year. There you go.
So you're telling me there's a chance. My favorite thing about this, so Dustin and I talked about this on today's show, and he's like, well, Marvin's just a different kid. And I'm like, so he doesn't like career? Like, because here's the thing. It's not about, like, I think it's twofold. One, nobody in their right mind, you're not going to make the kind of money you can in the pros in college, but no one should risk their body for an extra year. That cuts into his prime that could take off an extra year of making $20 million a year. That's one. Two, why would you ever delay the clock on that getting through that first contract? Because that's really the prize in the NFL. Yeah. It is getting through that first contract, maxing out that, and making $20-25 million a year. I know the collective pays well. I know if he went to the portal, he would have an offer for maybe $10 million, something ridiculous. You're not recouping the back end of your career. Yeah. That it is like it will literally take a year off your NFL career because you're still getting hit in college. So I think it's crazy as well.
And frankly, we talked about this being a great quarterback class. The fact that he's being mentioned as like the second overall pick maybe even first overall, depending on if the Bears get the first pick and they decide they're going to stick with Justin Fields or whatever the hell they're going to do.
That's also not happening.
Well, it's not going to happen, but I'm just saying, like, theoretically, like, the fact that he's being mentioned as the top 2 overall pick is in this quarterback class where quarterbacks are so highly coveted, like, that's pretty telling. Like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You don't come back, risk an injury, and then you go later in the draft. Like, I just don't see it happening.
All right, third down was this Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh's last matchup in the rivalry.
I think so. I think head to head, I think it is not. And I know Ohio State fans probably want to jump in and be like, oh, because Ryan Day is going to be gone next year, right? And I don't know if it's so much that, because as we've talked about, I think there's a lot of just context and things that are happening at Ohio State between Gene Smith, 12-team playoff, all these different things that are going to prevent them from moving on from Ryan Day. I think it's more so about Jim Harbaugh. I think Jim Harbaugh is ripe to go to the NFL. I saw something today about a report that there's new evidence that's going to be revealed or something like that about the Michigan sign stealing, that it's not supposed to result in like a postseason ban, but it likely means that, a suspension is probably likely for Harbaugh next year. I think he's done with the bullshit. I think there was a chance this was his ride off into the sunset year anyway, because he knew his team was talented and he had a shot at a national title and he was going to take it and then go to the NFL. I think that this is it for him. The only thing that worries me is that, like, Michigan's had his back so adamantly, and maybe he's like, you know what, this is the place I want to be. But a tiger doesn't change his stripes. The guy's been wanting to get back to the NFL. This year, there's going to be a bunch of jobs available, some good jobs available, especially if, like, the Chargers job opens up. And I think he's going to jump at the opportunity to take it. I think it's going
to be wild when Bill Belichick and Jim Harbaugh are co-head coaches of the LA Chargers. I don't think it is. I think a lot can change, but I'll listen. I think the NFL is dumb for not chasing Jim Harbaugh, but I think there's a lot of perceived baggage there. So I think it really depends. If Michigan wins a national title, I think it will be irresistible for teams in the NFL to pull him back to the NFL. But if he were to kind of be out in the first round, I mean, that's right around the time where, you're still like a week or a half week out from the end of the regular season. I don't think it's fait accompli just yet. That brings us to fourth and short, fourth down. Where will Ohio State be ranked this week?
There's no way they can drop below 6. Like, they have to stay in the top 6, Nick. Like, you lose to the number 3 team in the nation. I think there's an interesting conversation about whether or not Michigan jumps Georgia because they now have the best win of anybody in college football at this point. Like, that's interesting to me. But, like, I mean, they won't put. I think they probably go to 5, and you get Florida State jumping back in just because they stayed undefeated, and by nature you'll do that, which means that there will be a path back in. But as we know, like, not playing, being idle for conference championship weekend is going to really just it's going to be the big factor that weighs against Ohio State. There's so much that can play out, Nick, and I know we'll talk about this in our college football playoff ranking reaction show coming up Tuesday night. But yeah, like, I think the twisting of the dagger on Saturday was the fact that not only did Ohio State lose to Michigan, but then there was like 4 different scenarios that could have played out on Saturday afternoon and into the evening that would have actually benefited Ohio State to find a path back to the playoff, and they all didn't happen. Auburn almost beat Alabama, and then the Hail Mary to the end zone happened. Florida State was trailing Florida, and then they got their shit together and ended up rolling past them. Washington State almost beat Washington. Like, these were all things that almost benefited you, and none of it happened. And it was just like an extra twist of the dagger on that day that now it seems very unlikely that Ohio State gets back in, but we'll see.
I do think there's a chance they fall past 6. I don't think it's a big chance. I think they should be ranked ahead of Florida State, who I think have no business in this conversation. I don't care that they're undefeated. I could see the committee putting Florida State at 5, putting Ohio State at 6 to add a sense of drama and the assumption that Florida State could lose to Louisville in the ACC title game. But I think the rightful place is 5, and what that positions you is if Georgia beats Alabama, and if Washington beats Oregon, then it becomes
Yeah.
Texas versus Florida State versus Ohio State. And I think in that case, you've got the best loss, and you probably have better wins than either one of those schools either. So I think there's still multiple paths here. And listen, a lot of people in the national media are going to say, no, never, they're done. And they've said that every time Ohio State has lost.
They said it last year.
And they said it, and they're wrong. They're wrong. You know why? Because they don't want Ohio State to get in, because that Ohio State or any of the Blue Bloods really, as a one-loss non-conference champion, is supposed to be the Antichrist. And yet we've seen the commission, that we've seen the selection committee time and time again do the right thing. And honestly, if they put Florida State in, it's this year's Michigan State. It's this year's I don't want to say TCU because they got to the national title last year, but it's this year's paper tiger, and they're going to get blown out. And Ohio State might get blown out, but I think there's much less of a chance than Florida State with their backup or Texas with their backup. All right, guys, make sure to follow, rate, subscribe. I say that in the different order every single time to this podcast. Everywhere you get your podcast, make sure to also follow 92.3 The Fan on their YouTube page as well. Follow everything, rate everything. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back Tuesday night with the selection committee's latest playoff rankings and the answer to that last question on the fourth down there. Spencer, good stuff, buddy. Go Bucks.